humanize our brand? How is it that we can build a brand putting a little bit of compassion at the center of patient care, which is actually the first reason that why all of you all chose this profession. Taking this discussion forward will be our next set of speakers. Please put your hands together for our moderator, Mr. Joydeep Ghosh, partner and industry leader, life sciences and healthcare industry, Deloitte. Let's hear a round of applause for our esteemed panelists. We have with us Mr. Ajeet Chauhan, General Manager, Marketing, New Business and Strategic Alliance, OMRON Healthcare. Please also welcome amongst us Ms. Juhie Gorwara, Head Brand Communications, Digital, Philips Indian Subcontinent. May I also welcome Dr. Ashish, Bajaj, Chief Marketing Officer, Narayana Health. It's such a pleasure to have all of you here. May I request you all to please take a seat as per the images on the backdrop, so it's easy for my audience to connect with you all. We have only about 15 minutes for this interesting fireside chat, so let's make these very, very buzzing 15 minutes. All yours.
Thank you very much. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Even a very patient audience, not having the opportunity to ask too many questions. I hope to leave some time towards the end, at least to hear some questions. The topic, humanizing the brand. I mean, I thought it kind of a misnomer because, healthcare is all about humans, isn't it? It is the least understood of the machines which we are born with. Both in disease as in health. We are able to send people to the moon and Mars and send them back, not Mars so far, at least to the moon and space and bring them back. But our collective knowledge of the human body, both in health and disease, remains rather rudimentary. That's not what I'm saying. Thus spake many senior pundits of the industry, whom I respect a lot. But having this session here, first I thought, why is branding important in healthcare? I mean, when we were kids, there was not that much of branding, and we have kind of survived through our mid-50s even without that, haven't we? But the importance today, first of all, is because what I believe is trust. The patients, because they understand their needs and wants, but not necessarily the complications which go with it, they must have trust. They must have faith in the brand with whom they take their most coveted asset, their own health, for recovery in a time of distress. So trust is extremely important. That's probably the cornerstone of any brand, but most important in healthcare is what I would imagine. The second reason, of course, is that we live in a very information-rich, but arguably attention-poor, time-poor, and maybe even some cases insight-poor world, because there's so much of information, and in particular in a very complex case like human biology, it's so much more difficult for the uninitiated and the untrained, which most patients are, to make logical, rational decisions. So they use the limbic system of the brain, which is more connected towards behaviors and emotions, to make the decisions, not really an organized system of rationale. And that's where, again, branding, connecting with the people, connecting with the patients, with consistent, favorable outcomes is so much important. And the third reason I could think of is actually the health outcomes of patients may actually improve with a strong brand, because patients, when they get connected to a brand for good, for their lifetime, are more likely to follow the prescribed medical regimen, the treatment protocols, come back regularly for checkups, thereby creating a long-term history of their body in health and in disease in the chosen healthcare brand they choose to associate themselves with. And therefore, the need for having a very distinguished brand identity for today's healthcare providers. Because ultimately, even though we might say that the patient may not really understand the complexities of human biology and the medical treatments that are available, certainly not the devices, which are even more complex. We have to understand that tomorrow's or even today's medical brands will not be made or broken by the businesses. It will be made or broken by the patients. So it's all the more important to keep patient at the center of the brand identity. But given paucity of time and given that I have a great panel here with me, quickly introduce the panel. Ajeet Chauhan, General Manager, Marketing, New Business and Strategic Alliances, OMRON Healthcare. Ms. Juhie Gorwara, Head Brand Communication, Digital Marketing, Philips for the Indian Subcontinent. And Dr. Ashish Bajaj, Chief Marketing Officer, Narayana Health. I'll start with Ashish, if you don't mind. Why is brand a key factor in the way patients and patient parties choose their healthcare providers?
See, I think healthcare is one of the industry where we are not happy at the time when making a payment. So if you look at any other industry, while you're buying a product or a service, you are elated or rather have a feeling of what I'm paying has a tangible, happy benefit to me. But it's one place as a healthcare, as an industry, it's one place where we don't find that kind of synergies to a very larger extent of the majority of our engagement with the healthcare brand. Thus, it becomes very important. And the second biggest aspect becomes you're under a lot of pressure when you're making those decisions. Which, where, what healthcare brand that you need to work on. Now, if you look at these 2 pointers and figure out that it's very important for somebody to have a very long-term engagement, and engagement only comes in while you're building a brand for the long term. Thus, I think it's the most critical aspect of brand building should be healthcare as P0.
Okay, thanks a lot. I mean, you said rightly, a patient is a person in distress. And he's not able to always think, articulate clearly about his or her problems. Sometimes unable, sometimes unwilling, sometimes both. To move to the next question, how is brand loyalty maintained and strengthened in a highly regulated environment? Juhie, if you can take us through that, because healthcare happens to be a very regulated area and there are challenges and opportunities both.
Right. So good evening, ladies, gentlemen, and doctors. And the reason I say doctors specifically is from what I heard just before this, many of you speaking. Like you said, Joydeep, trust is important. And then you also spoke about regulated. And then we just also heard about the patient not being able to decide so much on their own, right? Because that time they are under stress. So then what is the most important factor for a healthcare brand? It's trust. It's trust, it's credibility, it's how you maintain patient safety, and the most important being quality. Philips has existed for 133 years globally. There is a lot that we carry along with us when it comes to trust and credibility over the years. What started with the light bulb is today a healthcare brand that people believe will hold the same standards that it has over the years with all its products. When a patient is in distress, they may not know what machine is being used because they trust the doctors. They trust all those of you in the room who are doctors who will be giving them the right guidance. And hence, that's how we build the brand.
Thank you, Juhie. Well articulated. Now we'll peel on a little bit more, Ajeet, if you don't mind, and ask you, have you heard all of those things, the objectives and necessity of a strong healthcare identity and brand? What are the key considerations when it comes to developing marketing strategies, especially when one is marketing to individual patients who are from, at least in India, we know, from very, very diverse backgrounds? I mean, what are those levers which you pull, Ajeet?
Thank you for your question, and good evening, everyone. I think to put the context, I would really like to start from some of the healthcare burden. Some of our panelists have already talked about it. In India, we have close to 220 million hypertensive population, out of which the WHO report says that close to 15% people out of this exposed populations are only on the treatment, and only 5% of them are having a regular healthcare monitoring at their home, which speaks about the gap, the huge gaps on the treatment side and also on the awareness side. If you also see certain ecosystem related challenges which further add and worsen the situation, that we have a very uneven distribution of, specialized doctors, like 6,000 cardiologists managing such a whooping population of India. And these things create a lot of, I would say, inputs to us as a brand who has a home healthcare monitoring device globally. So our strategies are actually around these challenging statements. And at OMRON, we have three buckets of our strategy when it comes to the holistic marketing. Number one, that how we can create overall awareness and education about home monitoring, not only for the patient, but also for some of the caregivers, healthcare practitioners, because KOL's recommendations plays a very crucial role when it comes to the decision making. The second thing is accessibility about our product in form of geographical expansion. Because as I said, that there are a lot of places where the doctors are not available. If the right screening device is there, I think it would add help to reduce and mitigate a lot of burden. And the third thing is about the product diversification. Very recently, we announced our factory here in India. We are now creating devices which are actually very set and fit for Indian audience. And we have a very strong conviction as OMRON that early monitoring or regular monitoring helps you to detect early, diagnose early. And if you are detect early and diagnose early, the early management would be possible. So that's our mantra, that's our conviction coming from the global market experiences. And that's how we plan the buckets of our marketing strategy.
Thank you very much, Ajeet. I asked someone, tell me what's the difference between marketing and branding. The very succinct answer I got was, marketing is a tactic which has a shelf life. It's an expiry date. Branding is a connection you make for life. So I thought that's quite interesting an answer. But coming back to Ashish, what role do some of the specialist doctors who are like stalwarts in their own field play in humanizing a brand which creates that trust, that aura of faithfulness in a patient?
See, individual identities becomes brand. We have many examples if we move out of the healthcare as well. We've seen founders becoming brand bigger than their own brand itself. Globally also, while in India as well. But in healthcare specifically, because they become role models. They are the ones people start worshipping because they feel that this is the person who's going to guide us the right thing. I think Joy, you very well articulated while you were setting up the context that people are in that particular frame of mind that they're just following what is being said. And over the years, if somebody has become and has been and stepped into the role where they're giving the right advice to the patient, that is how the healthcare professionals and Dr. Shetty also being one of it. We were discussing it before we were having a conversation. I'm happy to take his name in terms of saying that he's been one of that healthcare professional over the years, holded his sense of credibility and love of people.
Huge respect for him, absolutely. In the interest of time, quickly moving forward, Juhie, your company manufactures some of the most complex machines which help people in the worst of distress. Considering that patients are in need of care, more of sympathy and empathy rather than allopathy or homeopathy, to put it succinctly, they're in need of care and not so much in need of features. What are the best practices that we have followed in creating some of your most iconic brands?
Well, you started by saying that the machines are complex, and hence you mentioned features. But I don't want to get to the features part, because the features is something that is for the healthcare practitioner, the advisor, doctors that we just spoke about, who are highly educated to decide what works best. But what I do want to mention from a patient's perspective, from a consumer, from someone who's benefiting from the treatment that they're getting, is again the safety, the quality that the brand assures. If they know that they are being treated at a healthcare setup which is trusted, and a provider that is also going to be trusted well, and then the equipment is also Philips on top of it, that is the best assurance for a patient who's going to take that treatment from there. Whether it is a simple diagnosis, whether it is a treatment for life, whether it is home care, if you know that the quality is something you can believe in, then it goes a long way. That is what stays with people over the years.
Absolutely. Trust and quality. We keep coming back to the same things, which are the cornerstones of a great healthcare brand. Coming back to you, Ajeet. People today, as I said, information-rich world. There's ChatGPT, Google, GenAI, all that stuff. And they come back to the doctors already with lots and lots of, let me say, ill-informed opinions sometimes. In fact, I have been also guilty of that. My doctors have told me, why don't you stick to what you do best? So you stop meddling in our business. Just because I've read few things in Google, don't tell me that you know about what you want to do. So I want to tell you that what are the key decision influencing factors, considering that patients are already hyper aware and may have consulted Google, Gen, etc., before making their choices and taking their decisions. What are those factors you will play upon, Ajeet?
I would say very interesting question. I think we are living in a digital decade of India. A lot of consumers are going and doing Google search, Gen AI search. And for sure, it is helpful to have the know-how and knowledge about the products, sometimes comparative analysis of the brand's offerings, costing, and a bit of feature success. But I personally feel that when it comes to the final decision making, a very careful review of what is their healthcare need, what is the credibility of the brand, and above all, because our kind of devices are highly connected with the medical fraternity, what kind of recommendation their associated doctors are giving. That's a very, very critical factor. About blood pressure monitor as a whole, if I talk about it, I think accuracy is something which is very, very inevitable and important, because inaccurate data can lead to a lot of mismanagement of the whole disease spectrum. And the second thing which I would say is the credibility, because device, whether it has gone through the clinical validation certifications, like at OMRON, we have close to 350 million devices we sold globally. Devices are part of close to 350 global studies, and that's available into each and every country today. Being pioneer into this, we can say that the credibility is a factor which is actually helping the right decision making from the consumer side.
Perfect. Yeah. So I think to sum it up all, high, consistent, repeatable quality, repeatable performance, favorable outcomes is what creates this trust and credibility in a brand. And that's quite evident in the responses which our esteemed panel members have given us. If the organizers will allow me to open up the floor for some questions, she says no. I'm really sorry about that. She says no. But thanks a lot for hearing us patiently. Thank you, dear panel members. Thanks a lot for your insights. And I hope all of you have enjoyed it. We'll be around if you have some questions. Please feel free to ask. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ghosh. All I did was smile and thank you. A round of applause.